All right, guys, really quickly, I just wanted to record this for people who maybe just want to review our lesson from today, which is April 7th, and it'll also be the 8th for B-Day. And also make sure that if somebody is absent or wants to review, that they have access to this. If you want to find it, it's just going to be in the corresponding folder for each lesson week. And then there will be a folder within that that says live lessons with the date. So you can always go in there and access whatever you need to, okay? So first off, the objectives today, we're really just talking about distance learning and how it works. And then we quickly took a couple minutes just to talk about the objective for world, which was science, technology, and disease, okay? So we reviewed the expectations, had some questions, went over technology and disease and directions for this week and next week. So first off, just making sure that we're following some guidelines, make sure that we're speaking to each other respectfully. Anything you wouldn't say in school, hopefully we're not saying it to each other on camera. And then make sure that we're just appropriately clothed. Pajamas are totally fine, but make sure that we have clothes on, that we don't have like F words sprued across our shirts or anything like that. Try to avoid background noise when possible. I get that you guys are going to have parents and siblings all working from home right now. So if you know it's going to be loud, just do me a favor and mute the microphone. Make sure that we're paying attention. I get that, you know, it's not thrilling to sit and listen to somebody talk, especially multiple teachers for a long period of time. But please, you know, having attentiveness, not having your cell phone out would be appreciated. And then if you can prepare questions ahead of time, I encourage you to do that, especially if you're looking at the lesson, say on a Monday or Tuesday before we meet. That would be a good opportunity for you to meet me and talk about questions. So the first thing you want to do when you're starting online learning is definitely make sure that you are creating a schedule for yourself. I have a sample one that you don't need to follow, but it is there if that's something that can be useful to you. You know, you don't want to wait until Friday at 10 o'clock at night to start doing your work. So it is here. You can also find it under the resources, or sorry, materials. So if you scroll down under distance learning, frequently asked questions and tips, you will see it right here. And again, you don't need to follow this, but it is there to help you, okay? So the next thing you want to do is make sure that you're going into the correct folders. All the folders should be dated to be able to find them. So you'll notice that each week has its own folders. And then within those, you're going to find sometimes folders for each lesson. I know it's like a million folders, but I tried to make it as organized as possible so that it's as straightforward as possible. And then once you go into the folder, you want to follow the step-by-step directions within each folder. You're expected to complete 2 lessons a week per class, and each lesson should take you about 30 minutes. So expect to spend about 8 hours per week working on these assignments. You can notice that for this week, for week 2, lesson 1, or really that's next week, I have the directions, I have the objective, I have the discussion, stuff for you to learn, and stuff for you to practice. So every teacher should kind of have the same format for the lessons, where you'll read the objective, you'll do a discussion, you'll maybe watch a video or read something, and then you'll do some sort of practice and maybe an assessment. For me particularly, your assessments are probably just going to be the second lesson of the week, just because the review will take a little bit longer. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you're not necessarily going to have an assessment or a graded assignment for every lesson, just because you wouldn't be able to fit it in 30 minutes. And I wanted to try to adhere to that 30-minute timeline. Okay, the live class times are once a week for about 25-30 minutes each. I was finding today I was taking about 20 to 25 minutes. I want to make sure that, you know, you guys have time in between to, you know, go to the bathroom or get into the new sessions when you need to. Okay, you'll notice that Tuesdays are always an A day, Wednesdays are always a B day. I did have a question today. Somebody said, well, do they flip-flop each week? No, they stay the same. So we're not really following an A-day, B-day schedule really anymore. It's just Tuesdays are considered A days and Wednesdays are considered B days. I will be taking attendance. So if you're not able to attend a live class, they will be recorded, but please try to attend them. Unless there's something keeping you from doing that. So maybe you have to watch a sibling, or maybe you have to take care of somebody. Please let me know, because if you don't communicate that stuff to me, I won't be able to tell you guys, okay? So please just keep in contact with me if you're having issues. So for next week's lesson, that's not this week, but next week, I wanted to go over it just because it is a little bit, not necessarily complicated, but it could be. So like I said, for next week, you're going to go into week 2, and you'll notice that there are 2 lessons. So for week 2, lesson 1, the directions are pretty concrete right here. But it goes, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to look at all the objectives for Unit 1, and it is attached right here. So you'll just open up that file and you'll look at all the objectives and just say, okay, what is one that I really don't remember, or one that I might struggle with, okay? And it's really just this first page. The second page is all content and vocabulary type stuff. So once you've done that, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the discussion. So you'll notice that it says, after reading through the objectives, either copy and paste or describe which learning objective you feel least confident about and explain why in 1 to 2 sentences. So this should take you, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes to do that first step. And then what I'll ask you to do is, using the PDF, complete some sort of review activity. So when you click on this, I don't want you to panic because it's going to have a ton of stuff on here. But the idea is that you have options. So let's say the objective you picked had to do with state building in the Americas. Well, then what I'd ask you to do is to review that. And there's tons of options here. So you can either, these are all like PowerPoints, so you can click on a PowerPoint and review, or you can do video review. So there's tons of videos. So I want to be very clear that you're not expected to look at all of this, really just to pick one. And I will say, I can't make you do this, but it would be a good idea, like let's say you don't understand 2 or 3 of the objectives, it might be a good idea to take some extra time and review them. But again, really the idea is to just do one for the 30-minute lesson. So then once you finish your review, which again could be watching a video, it could be taking notes on a PowerPoint, whatever your thing is, you can go to the practice. So here you're going to do a Kahoot or Quizlet or Quizzes, whatever you want to do, just pick one of them to play a game and review. If you really bomb the quiz, I'm going to suggest that maybe you go back and review stuff that you struggled with, but it's not going to be required. So that is the first lesson for the week. The second lesson for the week is going to be actually application and skill-based stuff. So the directions are here. There's the objective, and then what I'll ask you to do is we're going to practice writing DDQs, because that's what the exam is on now. If you really want to know a lot about the exam, this is going to be the focus of my lesson next week, but I do have a page on the materials that kind of goes over all this. So what I'll ask you to do after you finish the review for our second lesson next week, you're going to watch this video. This is essentially me going through and annotating 5 different documents. It took me about 13 minutes to do so. The video is about 15 minutes just because I'm explaining how I do that. So once you finish watching that, then you're going to click on this. Now keep in mind, this is timed, okay? The reason being is I want to see, can you annotate and review 5 documents and write a thesis in 15 minutes? So make sure that when you open that you're ready to go, that you can focus for 15 minutes to get that done. So this lesson in total should take you maybe just a touch over 30 minutes, and I apologize for that, but this is 15 minutes and this is time for 15 minutes. So just kind of keep that in mind, that that's your lessons for next week, okay? This week you only have one, which is the disease one, okay? The last thing I'm going to do is I just wanted to review this really because the DBQ, if you remember one of the points, the complexity point, you could relate it to another time period or another event. So we don't know what the DBQ is going to be on, so I just wanted to quickly cover these things from Unit 1 that you need to know. So the first thing is the idea that advancements in science lead to reduced problems with geographic distance. It's also sometimes referred to as part of the idea is globalization, with the idea that the world is a lot smaller now if you think about it, because if I wanted to have a conversation with somebody in Japan 100 years ago, I would have had to write a letter, and it would have had to taken a few months to get there and then getting a message back. Whereas now I can call them up, I can FaceTime them, I can do a Google Meet with them if you really wanted to. So there's all these different types of communication and transportation that lead to, there's less of a problem with geographic distance. The Green Revolution, I just want you to be familiar with what this is. A lot of kids tend to think it's not a real thing, that didn't happen. But essentially, there's this guy named Norman Borlaug, which you can see his name there. Oops. And essentially, during the 1960s, he started to do a bit of research into the way that we grow our food and population increases. And he realized that if we don't change the way that we grow our food, then we are not going to be able to feed the population that has since increased. So he started by doing things like high yield cereal grains, hybrid seeds, synthetic fertilizers, genetically modified crops, things like that, all in the name of increasing the output of food that we're making. And then there's medical innovations like vaccines that lead us to be able to live longer lives. You can see all the different examples there. And then you also have diseases associated with poverty, with lifestyle changes. So you'll notice that the ones with poverty, things like malaria, cholera, tuberculosis, those are usually going to be in high poverty areas because it's really due to a lack of infrastructure. You know, cholera is all about not having clean drinking water. So you'll notice that most of the places are going to be places that suffer from poverty. Then you also have lifestyle changes, so Alzheimer's. People are living a lot longer now, and 100 years ago they might not have realized that somebody had Alzheimer's if they were really old, but now that our population is getting a lot older, you see more cases of it. Same with diabetes and heart disease. Usually that has to do with just not eating as well as you should. This is a new time in our history where obesity is a big problem, and so you have diseases related to obesity. Not that diabetes is always obesity, but it can be linked to that. And then same with new epidemics. So things like the 1918 flu, which you're probably hearing a lot about. People living with HIV and AIDS, Ebola, and certainly coronavirus will definitely be involved in these new epidemics. Okay. Energy technologies, all you need to know is that energy technologies increase output, which increases the number of stuff, or the amount of stuff that we can make. Global population expanding, so that leads us to, shaping the environment that we're around. This is, not a new thing. If you think about when people first started planting crops, that's us manipulating the environment. It's just really changed over time. And then this is sort of the same idea that, we're manipulating the environment based on the activities of human beings. Birth control. Just you need to know that birth control was sort of a new invention in the 20th century, and it allowed women to really have more options in their life than just staying at home and having babies until they can't anymore. And then we've already talked about the military technology, just knowing that new military technology allows people to wage war in ways that they had not before, that it leads to increased casualties, increased damage. So that's really the idea. So hopefully this is useful and you can go back and review it if you need to. If you guys have questions, please feel free to reach out.